Welcome to the Simply Chosen podcast, where being simply chosen, we must now choose what we will let lead us and what will let stop us. We are committing to making decisions to get different outcomes that grow us mentally, spiritually, and physically so we can prosper in how we've been chosen. I'm your host, Tiana, the founder of Faith and Authority, where I teach men and women the art and science of healthy relationships. So grab a pen, keep listening, and prepare to make a simple choice of where you'll go from here. Welcome back to the Simply Chosen podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about why you need to stop running away. Because see, you've been called to it, Jonah. And for those of you wondering who in the world Jonah is, read the 4 chapters of the book of Jonah in the Bible, and that'll give you all the background and history. But I'll break it down a little bit for you here. Jonah is a character in the Bible who was told by God to go to a place called Nineveh to warn the people. See, Nineveh was a place where people were acting a whole fool. They were acting up, they weren't following commands, they weren't treating each other well, they were doing a lot of misbehaving, and Jonah was trying to do his best to do what was right. And he felt as though, why should I go warn these people who are constantly doing the wrong thing so that way God can give them grace and save them? He didn't understand why. Why would God call me to go and help them out of their wrong behavior instead of them dealing with the consequences of their actions? And let me tell you, as much as we may want to know the why behind the instruction, we may not get it. And you know what? It's honestly outside of our pay grade because we are not in the same pay grade as God. Okay? His thoughts are not our thoughts and his ways are not our ways. As the heavens are high above the earth, so are his ways than our ways and his thoughts than our thoughts. It's not for us to figure out why he's called us to do what we do. It's not for us to figure out why we're receiving the instruction we are. It is on us just to be obedient and follow it. Jonah, trying to rationalize why God wanted him to go to Nineveh and feeling like it wasn't the right thing to do because he didn't want to go and deliver this message to save these people, he decided, I'm not going to listen to this. So he marched himself down to Joppa, found a boat that was headed the complete opposite direction of Nineveh, which was Tarshish, decided he was going to pay to get on a boat to try to get away from the thing that God had called him to do. So he gets on this boat, he goes down to the bottom of the boat and falls asleep. So now he's done tried to run. He has gone into a boat. He has gone out on the water and he has gone to sleep, trying not to hear the instruction that he is supposed to follow. While he is asleep on the bottom of the boat ends up going into a storm. Now the people on the boat get frantic. They start praying to whatever gods they're worshiping. They start throwing stuff overboard, trying to make the boat lighter. They're trying to do whatever they can because they're afraid that the ship is going to get wrecked and they're all going to die. So they're doing whatever they can to save their lives. And so they get to a point where they realize, well, we're all here frantic trying to save ourselves. But wait, there's somebody who's sleeping through all of this on the bottom of the boat. So the captain says, well, go, get him up. Wake him on up. He need to call on his God too. We calling out for help. He needs to call out for help. They wake Jonah up, ask Jonah some questions. Well, why are you here? Where'd you come from? What is going on? Because they're starting to realize this isn't a regular storm. Okay, there's something else that's going on behind this storm, and we need to know what happened so we know how to correct it and save ourselves. So Jonah ends up telling them who he is and says, listen, since y'all want to save yourselves, because they asked him how they could, he says, go ahead and throw me overboard. Now, this happens after the people have gotten to the point where they decided to cast lots. So literally, Jonah got the short end of the stick, which identified the reason they're going through all of this is because of Jonah. And so as Jonah's explaining himself, and they now know this storm is happening because of you and because of something between you and your God, we need you to fix this. We need to know, how do we save ourselves? And so that was the response Jonah gave was, well, throw me overboard. Not let me be obedient and do what God told me to do. Not send me back to Joppa where you found me so I can go to Nineveh like I'm supposed to. But it was throw me to the ocean. These people were so afraid because they're already seeing what God is doing within the boat. They do not want to now be responsible for the fact that this man is running and this man may die. So they're hoping that they're not going to be punished if he were to go in this water and drown. But eventually, they don't have any other choice. They do what he says and they toss himself overboard. When they toss him overboard, God had already prepared a fish in the ocean to swallow him up. Now see, Jonah ran because he was trying not to hear God and trying not to do what God told him to do. And yet even the place he ran to had something there prepared by God to catch him. See, there's no amount of running, swimming, evading, sleeping, no amount of anything you can do to get away from the call on your life and the instruction that there is for you. So Jonah ends up being swallowed up by the fish, sits in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Now that he's gone through 3 days and 3 nights in darkness inside of a fish, now he decides he wants to listen. So he cries out to God, who has the fish spit him up onto the ground. Jonah is finally willing to listen, takes himself on over to Nineveh, gives the message he's supposed to give. But Jonah's still salty. Jonah now goes and sits under a tree, finding him a little bit of shade. He's still mad that he had to go deliver this message to people because he knew his God. He knew God was going to go ahead and give these people grace despite all the wrongs that they had been doing. And Jonah didn't feel that they were deserving of it. But again, Jonah doesn't have the same understanding that God does. Jonah's sitting salty under this tree, finally finds this leaf that gives him shade. Well, now a little insect comes and starts chomping on the tree. Now his shade is gone. God has to have another conversation with him about how Jonah had this idea that he had been doing all these things. He doesn't understand why people don't have to experience their consequences of their actions. And God never really addresses that in the story of Jonah. But he does address Jonah. And he addresses him from the point of, you have the audacity to be mad. The shade from this leaf in this tree that you did not plant has gotten eaten up and became a food source for another animal, and you mad. At the end of the day, that wasn't Jonah's tree, and that was not his leaf. And yet he's upset that it was taken away from him. Well, you also don't know what other things other people are going through and what may have been taken away from them. It's not for us to figure out the entire situation. We can't. From our vantage point, we cannot see high enough, we cannot see far enough to figure out everything that's going to transpire in connection to the things that we do. So that's why it's so important to listen to what God says and to just follow his instruction. Jonah tried to run away. Jonah tried to swim away. Jonah tried to drown. Jonah sat in a fish for 3 days. And at the end of all of that time and all that running and all that evading, he still ended up right where he was told to be in the first place. So when you hear the message and you hear the voice, do what you're told to do. Because it doesn't make sense to waste the time trying to evade it to end up where you was going to be anyway. On top of that, now let's take it and let's relate it to relationships. In relationships, we often get those red flags or those gut feelings, which is really our conscience or the spirit telling us there's something that we need to be aware of or pay attention to. Stop ignoring the red flags. Stop recoloring to make them orange and pink and all these other colors that are just not red. Stop ignoring the fact that as much as your flesh and your mind and your heart want this person, that person is not set up to give you the things that you need. This person is not desiring to step up and give you the things that you deserve. Accept it. Listen to those instructions and do what needs to be done. Because you will spend all that time evading, all that time trying to change reality to end up where you should have gone anyway. With this message, your instructions now are to read the book of Jonah. It is only 4 chapters and it is well worth it. read the book of Jonah, and then take it to God and journal about what are the instructions that you've been given in your relationship, in your personal life, in your walk with Christ that you have not yet taken. What things have you been evading or avoiding? Journal it all out. Figure out why you're evading it, and understand, like Jonah, you cannot allow your emotions and your feelings to prevent you from following the instruction. You have to put those emotions, that baggage, those rationales, those reasonings, you have to take all that with you and still go the direction God told you to go. Jonah needed to take all those emotions he was feeling, all the things he didn't want to do, all the questions he had. He needed to just go ahead and put those in his little bag and pack them up and walk with them right over to Nineveh. Because at the end of the day, that's where he was going to end up anyway. Write down all those things that you're feeling also. Write down all your rationale. Write down those things that are holding you back from following the instructions. Because I'm not telling you to not be aware of them. Be aware of them, but take them with you as you follow the instruction. And in time, God will help you to understand. In time, God will give you answers to those questions. But don't allow any of that to prevent you from doing what you need to do to be where you need to be and to be in the position that you have been called to. So I hope this message blessed you. Hope you learned something. Make sure you journal and you do this assignment, and I will see you in the next episode.